So congruent polygons, right, have congruent corresponding parts. Right, so what that means is that all matching sides and angles are congruent. And so the big thing here is that when I name congruent figures, I want to make sure I name them in the same order of points. Okay. So if I look at this first example, right, ABCD is congruent to EFGH. So that is what I call a congruent statement. Okay. So we're talking.
Oh.
So
Why come over here?
because I got to keep an eye on. When we talk about listing congruent figure or congruent sides and angles, right? We're going to start with the angles and say angle A, right, is congruent. And so look and say, kind of look at that idea that A is first, so I go with what's first here. And so angle A and angle E are congruent. So B has to be congruent to what? F, right? Just kind of go in that same order. And so C has to be congruent to what? G. And then angle D is congruent to angle H. Same thing with the sides. And so AB is going to be congruent to what side? Okay, so yeah, I want to name it EF because I want to go in the same order, right? So since A and E correspond, that's what's going to go first. And so I keep working around, right? BC is going to be congruent to FG. CD is congruent to. Anybody got it?
Wait, what?
CD is congruent to what? GH.
No.
Right? And then the last side I have, AD is congruent to EH. Alright, so look at that, right? That was kind of tedious and annoying, right? So we're going to talk about how we could label this stuff without writing all that out, because that was a lot to write. Right? So one thing I do want you to do is, on yours, change the name of that second one to LONM. I just kind of had a little typo there or drew the picture wrong. So I can label things as congruent, like just by labeling them in a picture. Right? So if I start with HI, right, that single tick mark there tells me congruence. Right? So HI is congruent to what other side and the other one?
And then HI.
Yep, HI is congruent to what? So LO, right?
Hello.
Because it flips.
Because look at HI is the first two, LO is the first two.
I thought it was a rectangle.
That's going to confuse me so much, not being able to say it like that, have to say it in direct order like that.
I can just do that. So
Just a rectangle.
I can do that tick marks, right? And so look at it and say IJ. Now because I'm talking about a separate side, I'm going to do two tick marks. All right, that's how I differentiate sides. So IJ is congruent to what? ON, right?
And then we use 3 tick marks.
Yep, I'm going to use 3. Right, so NM,
KJ,
KJ.
LM, HK.
And that one I'm going to use 4. We're not going to do much more. For most of this unit, we'll talk about triangles, so we'll have only 3 tick marks, but we're not going to go anything more than 4, just because then it starts getting really complicated. So that's how we label congruent sides, right? If I want to label congruent angles, right? So say angle H, I'm going to kind of make a circle in that corner, right? The start of a circle in the corner. So H is congruent to what?
Oh.
L, right?
Oh.
So 1 to 1. Let's keep going around. I, kind of like I did before, I'm going to do 2 of those little half circle things. Right, so I and O. J, I'll use 3 of those. Yep. And so now when I look at this, and once I start getting more than 3, it gets kind of messy, right? So sometimes what you'll see is you'll see like that half circle, but with the tick mark through it. And so that shows you that those are also congruent. The basic idea here is that whatever ones I use, I'm just looking for the same on corresponding parts to tell if those are congruent. Okay. All right, so we got a few examples to kind of look at, and then you'll have lots of time in class to work. So, if I look at this, right, I have this congruent statement that says triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. So I look and they tell me A is 35 and they want to know what is D. So I need to know, are A and D going to be congruent? Okay, how do you know, Trenton?
Because when you flip, it's just flipped, right? I don't know. It's hard to explain it. Yeah. Like, I can't explain it. But
So can you explain it using this congruent statement?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because it goes off of the first letter, like the letters.
Yeah, right? They're both kind of that first position, so A and D correspond. So D has to be what then if it's congruent? 35. All right, simple as that.
Me?
Oh.
I'm not doing it.
Okay, so this third angle theorem, right? It sounds kind of scary,
You need to split them up.
but it's pretty much common sense, right? So if 2 angles are congruent in one triangle to 2 angles of another, the third angles have to be congruent. Right, so we'll kind of break that down. So I have this idea here that if I had angle A and D and B and E, right? Those two are congruent. The idea is that C and F are going to be congruent. So anything about Y, right? What do I know that all the angles in a triangle, no matter what type of triangle it is, add to? 180, right? So if I have 2 of the angles are the same in 2 triangles, 180 whatever A and B is will give me C. And since D and E are the same thing, that third angle has to be congruent. Right? It's kind of common sense, right? It should logically make sense why this is happening. So if I looked at this example here, right? First question is, what do I know about G and Z? Right, so what do I know about this angle and that angle?
Equivalent. Congruent.
They're going to be congruent, they're equivalent. How do I know that?
Because
the other ones are the other two.
The other 2 are the same, right? I have a 70 degree in both and a 50 degree in both. So I know they're congruent. And then what about what's their measure going to be?
Add 50 and 70.
So I add 50 and 70 together, right? So it should get 120.
Subtract.
And I do 180 minus that. So they're going to both equal 60. Okay. Not too bad, right? So I got one more example here. So if I look at this example here, right, they tell me that ABC and KLM are congruent. These types of questions are saying, hey, if they're congruent, what's the value of the variable have to be? Right, so if I look, right, I have sides and I have angles. So they tell me stuff about AB and KL. What do I know about those 2 sides?
They're the same.
How do you know they're the same?
They're both 90 degrees.
So what I want to look at is that congruent statement, right? AB is KL the first two.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's how I know they're congruent.
Or you can share the both to a triangle. Or you can be like, both 90 degree triangle.
You can't go off
Kind of. It's not.
You're wrong, but
Okay. So if I know that those are congruent, not 26. So it's T. What am I going to put in between those to set up an equation?
a congruent sign.
I don't know. Minus.
I want an equal sign, right? Congruence tells me things are equal. To do that, so T has to be what?
Two.
It's 2, right? All right, so now I need to look at
Bless you.
that 3x. So is angle A and angle M congruent?
No.
No, right? M is congruent to what? C. Do I know what angle C is? So it's 3x, right? But is it, if I set up an equation 3x equals 3x, does that help me?
No.
No. Can I figure out what angle C is?
Do 45 plus 90 minus 1 and 2.
Yeah. 45 plus 90, subtract that from 180. This one is going to happen to be the same, right? It is 45. Won't always work like that. So I set up that equation, right? Things are congruent. I set them equal to each other. So 3x equals 45. X equals 15.